Good evening, I'm Janet Hansen, the Chair of the Historic Site Preservation Board. It's 5:30 and I'm calling this April 7th meeting of the board to order. That's my gavel. May we please have the roll call?
Yes. Chair Hansen?
Present.
Vice Chair Bachman?
Present.
Member Hare?
Here.
Member Maruzzi?
Here.
Member Conessa?
Here.
Member Moshka-Hitchcock? And Member McCready?
Here.
All right, may we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review in the required locations in accordance with the city's ordinance.
All right. Do any board members have revisions to the agenda, including requests to remove items on the consent calendar for further discussion? Everybody's good? All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay. Have a motion by Board Member Payanessa and a second by Board Member McCready. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the motion passes 6-0. Public comment. Moving on to public comment, this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter of the board. Although the board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned to each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of that hearing. So today we do have 2 non-public hearing items on the agenda under new business, items 4A and B. And now would be the time for public comments on those items. And I do have 2 speaker slips. The first one is Summer Vega.
Let's see.
You want to come up to the table? Sure. And you have 3 that can sit. Yeah, sit down, please.
Well, hello. My name's Summer. I am a dual tenant at 457 North Palm Canyon, and I have a shop and a residence there. And I'm just here to say how amazing it's been being a part of the new vision with the new owner and the new direction that it's all taken. I'm honored to be a part of it. I think it's just created a total new energy with the building and within the community. I can't tell you how many times a day I hear the local people go, oh, we kind of wrote this building off, but what's going on? Something's different and new. So it's been really exciting to be a part of it all and hear the positive feedback. And it's just, we have all these new tenants, so we're all like this little family, and it's this little village. So I've been there since in the front space. I'm in the front space facing Palm Canyon. I've been there since October, and it just gets better and better. So thank you to the new owner and to all of you for supporting it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And our second speaker is Shaheen Sadeghi.
And for the record, I'd like to go ahead and state that Member Moshka-Hitchcock has joined the meeting.
Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you very much for putting up with me again. Wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for your support the last time we met. And this building, obviously, we were emotionally involved and been really working hard to bring in the integrity back. As Ms. Vega alluded, we're getting some great feedback from the city. I would be very grateful if you supported the final touches that we want to put in this building. I wanted to just reiterate the fact that we have not done anything structurally to structurally compromise the integrity of this building. So most of the work that is in discussion is things that can be changed, like paint. I do understand there was a little bit of a pushback on the lighting. Our entire team has been dedicated to preservation of projects here for the last 33 years. Most all of our projects are in Orange County, so we're excited now to be in Palm Springs. We honestly have never had an issue on the interior. Although we work with our consultants, the exterior has always been the main criteria to make sure that we keep the integrity. And I think my office sent some slides of some of the work that we have done in Orange County. We've done about a dozen got many awards for the preservation, California. So we hope this project falls in the same place, and I really sincerely appreciate your trust in us, and to allow us to just, continue to make this building more beautiful. Having the two little patios in the front, I think would mean a lot to us and to our tenant. I think over time, both of the tenants to the north and south of me, they both added patios, as many people have on the street, and so this building kind of sits back and gets tucked away. So I think we're just softening the front and having some gardening would, greatly, improve the presentation. So thank you again for your consideration, and I'm very grateful, and I'm here. If you have any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to address it for you.
If they have any questions, we'll do that later on during item 4B.
Thank you.
Okay. And then are there any additional online comments on non-public hearing items or an item that is not on today's agenda? No? Okay. I will now close the public comment and proceed to the next agenda item, which is the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, which is the draft minutes of the March 3rd meeting. Does anyone wish to provide comment on the draft minutes? Board Member Hare?
Under roll call and under acceptance of agenda, I think Peter Marusi's name has been omitted.
That's an outrage.
So you said under roll call and what was the?
Acceptance of
the
agenda. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Sarah, you have that?
I do. I'll correct that. That was my,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry.
It'll be amended.
a little humor, Tuesday night humor. Okay, does anyone else have any comments or corrections on the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the March minutes on the consent calendar?
I move.
Board Member Hare, and is there a second?
Marucci.
Board Member Marusi. Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Hare and a second by Board Member Marusi. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We do have one abstain. So the motion passes, I think I could count, right? It's only 7 of us. 6-0 with 1 abstention. All right. Moving on to public hearings. The first item is an owner-initiated application for historic site designation of the Snyder residence located at 271 West Morito Place, assessor parcel number 505-301-001, case number HSPB 176. May we have the staff report, please?
The Snyder residence with the case number HSPB 176 is a single-family home in West Morito Place. The current owners of the home have submitted an application to request for Class 1 status of this property. This property is located at the corner of Morito Place and Cahuilla Road. It's been occupied in that location since 1932. The original owners, John and Estella Snyder, referred to this home as Morada de Estella and was owned by this particular property owner until 1943. William C. Tanner designed the home in a similar style to the Nellie Kaufman's Desert Inn complex. Here's some photographs of the home as its current state. In its current state with different angles and elevations. As you can see, the home retains the overall feel, scale, and design from when it was first completed. And the future additions and alterations of the home were done in a way that was harmonious with the original design. In the rear elevation, you see the enclosure of the rear porch and the extension of the roof structure. Those were also done in a way that's respectful to the original form and style of the home. And the photo on the bottom right-hand corner shows the modest entry feature that was altered but maintains the same footprint and roof overhang. to the historic designation criteria, section 8.05.070 of the municipal code, in order to be considered for historic designation, it must first meet one or more of the following criteria. As an early example of residential development in the 1930s, 271 West Morito Place exemplifies the transformation of Palm Springs from what was a sanatorium beginning to a luxury winter resort town. The custom design home was built in the Spanish colonial style, which was widely popular throughout Southern California during this time. And the architectural detailing found on the home is distinct and intentional. The overall design and type of development that we see in 271 Morito reflects the period from both a state and local standpoint. The criterion number 2. Additionally, the design of the home is attributed to the designer William Charles Tanner, who was an accomplished designer and artist from that time period. Locally, he designed the O'Donnell residence in Vernada, and the report also clarifies that he was the designer for Nellie Kaufman's transformation of the Desert Inn into the complex and resort that's often referred to in our history. This home for the Schneiders was designed during what would be classified as the peak of his career. So with that, we find that criterion 3 and 5 are met. And as a request for Class 1 status, the property must also meet the integrity findings. As you see on this slide, the home is located in its original location. The design remains mostly intact, and the setting has been in its respectful setting, and the design remains unchanged. As a high-end home, the materials and workmanship found on the property are of artistic value and craft, and the feeling associated with the period between the wars and the retention of the neighborhood pattern all contribute to the site's authenticity. And of course, its association with William Tanner remains strong. As part of the in-depth analysis of the site, the report reviews character-defining features of the site. These are listed in full in the draft ordinance, the draft resolution, prepared in your packet material. Many important features like the sawtooth board siding under the roof gables, the exterior treatment of the walls as noted on the report and in the description of the report. A unique condition to point out, however, is that there are some original features that have changed its location in terms of the proximity to its building. For example, the original fireplace, which was on the exterior wall and rear of the home, is now identified as being an interior feature subsequent to renovations that happened afterwards. Now, as a restored feature, it is located inside the home. However, it is important to call out. Along with historic character-defining features, a list of non-contributing elements is also provided. Of those, the surrounding landscape and hardscapes are also listed. And to conclude, the evidence gathered through the Historic Resources Report and the many site visits, they all verify that the site meets criterion 3 and 5, and the integrity findings are met in full to meet with the requirements for a Class 1 designation. The owners of the property, having initiated the application, put efforts into restoring historic elements and wish for the site to be designated and protected as a historic landmark for the future. Based on this analysis, staff recommends Class 1 status for the Schneider home at 271 West Morito Place. And the applicant team, including the current owners, I believe, are here to answer any additional questions.
Do any board members have a question for staff? Board member here.
I was intrigued by one of the public comments that came from the city of Riverside, county flood control. Is this something new that we'll be dealing with, or I'm confused as to even why they would comment. Can you comment?
So my guess is that they were included as part of the neighborhood outreach group. We have a certain mailing list that goes out to our community to inform them of any designation applications within a specific radius. We have one for the neighborhood that's a 500-foot radius, and then one that's a 1-mile radius, and then we may have some other constituents that are added to that list. So my guess is that they are part of that list. Oftentimes, we don't get comments unless they are with a specific comment. In this case, I think it was a comment saying they had no comment. But
Yeah.
Usually we would get something if there's something to add. I guess they were part of that list.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a first for us. Anyone else? Everybody good? Okay, so seeing no questions for staff, I'll now open the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. First, we're going to go to the applicant. Do you have any comments for us this evening? And if you could come up to the table, please, and have a seat.
Makes me nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Do you mind if I read off my phone?
No.
Because I'll be like Bugs Bunny if I don't. Thank you for considering the nomination application of Maratala, Australia for a Class 1 historic designation. Bob, my spouse, and I have been excited about the house and enthusiastic about digging into its history. But nothing would have come of it had we non-historians had not had the help and encouragement that was afforded to us by Gary Johns in particular, Tracy Conrad, Steve Vaught, who wrote the report, and Steve Keelong, among others, and the many people who sent in their supportive comments to this body, including the Tanner heirs, the Snyder heirs, and one second here, and our wonderful neighbors. It's great to live in such a preservation-minded community. So we're grateful for that. I have to say the most gratifying part of the process has been to help a deserving Renaissance man, William Charles Tanner, get the recognition and accolades he deserves. When I first started researching Tanner, I couldn't find much about him. One of the few articles I did find referred to him as a virtual unknown. When we were finally able to track down his family, they had no idea about the amazing accomplishments he had done, none. So helping to restore him to his rightful place as a writer, journalist, artist, and architectural designer has been very, very rewarding. It's easy to be overwhelmed by the wealth of fabulous mid-century modern buildings in Palm Springs, but we do well to remember the origins and design bridges from the original Spanish colonial architecture of early Palm Springs to the mid-century and modern work of today. They're all connected, and the puzzle is more complete and satisfying when we're aware of the path it took to get here. To finish, I'd just like to recount your mission statement. The Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate and promote public awareness of the importance of preserving the historical resources and architecture of the city of Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley area. Having gone through this process now, I'd like to make a suggestion about how to make the future non-historian preservationists work a little easier. The first document that started us on our path to finding out about our home and its architectural designer was an obscure document posted on the City of Palm Springs website. For me, it served as the sort of Rosetta Stone that helped this non-historian decipher who our architect was. It really was nearly impossible to find this document again in a search of the City of Palm Springs website when I tried to locate it later, and can only find it if you know the document's ID number, which is 63950 for anyone who's interested. It is mysteriously titled Survey Findings Eligible. There's now a more updated survey in the City of Palm Springs titled Citywide Historic Resource Inventory Eligible. My suggestion is that this document be published as a clickable graphic button link with the title, Is Your Home Eligible as an Historic Resource? On both the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation homepage and the City of Palm Springs homepage. That simple addition would help you get to the core purpose of your mission statement by democratizing the process of historic preservation and by enlisting the help of non-historians. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there any other member of the applicant team online? I know the Stephen Trina? Stephen Bott. Is he?
He's on.
I don't know if he wanted to speak or he's just available for questions.
Yes, he's raising his hand.
Okay, then let's hear from him before we see what else we have from the public.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Steve, you're on.
Am I on audio or just, I don't think I got my video up, but that's all right. Less seen, the better, I suppose. I just wanted to second anything that Steve Scott said about this house. It was a tremendous honor to work on it. And especially when you had the homeowners who were as enthusiastic and as knowledgeable, and they brought in so much detail. We know more about William Charles Tanner now and the Snyders thanks to Steve Scott's amazing research on this, and it pays off for other Tanner things. Tanner is the biggest star of architecture in Palm Springs in the 1920s, and yet it's only been in the last few years we've even found a picture of him. That is also thanks to Steve, I believe. And we're learning more about it, but this him every day. But this house is a tremendous example of Palm Springs in the 1930s, which was such a critical era for architecture, and also of Tanner's work with that. And it's been, it is really a step back in time, and it does bear the resemblance to the Desert Inn, which Tanner is most famous for. And we all believe that Tanner modeled this house after the Desert Inn. It would make certain sense. They certainly have many stylistic things. It's a tremendous house that has, I think if the Snyders were to come back today, they'd look at it and go, oh, you repainted it. But still, they would still recognize it as much. And Tanner, I think, would be very proud himself of the work. It's been, even the changes have been done lovingly over the years. Film star Rod Taylor did a lot of stuff to the house, but he always made sure and did it in a harmonious way. So I highly recommend this to be nominated as Class 1 for obvious reasons, and I think it's a great treasure that will be added to the Palm Springs crown, historic crown, something like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. If we have any questions for the applicant team, we'll entertain those later during discussion. But for now, I'm going to open the public hearing. And I don't have any speaker slips.
I would like to speak.
Can you go ahead and speak, but fill that out.
Okay.
And then hand it to staff when you're done.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Scheffler. I'm Vice President of the Las Palmas Neighborhood Organization, and also ran the house tour for modernism for Old Las Palmas. And Steve and Bob were very gracious to allow their house to be on the tour last February. So I got to know the house pretty well, and they have done a remarkable job in retaining the character of the house and also educating us about William Charles Tanner. As has been mentioned, he was the designer behind the Desert Inn, as well as the O'Donnell House and the O'Donnell Clubhouse, which 1PS had as part of the historical walking tour this past October as well. So I think it's a great day for the architectural genius of Tanner to be recognized by this group and by the city. And so and I know I speak for the entire board of Las Palmas, wholeheartedly endorse this and recommend that you approve this. So, thank you.
Thank you. I did want to mention that we did get quite a few letters in support also, but I'm going to last call for anyone who wants to speak in support of the project. Okay, well, seeing none, then I will close the public, I'm sorry, let's go, is there anyone online who has signed up to speak? Okay, so then, seeing no further speakers, I will close the public hearing, and now the actions with the board discussion. Any comments, or discussion, or any potential questions for the applicant? Okay. Board Member Hare.
Well, in looking at the way the resolution has been written by staff, first of all, let me say I don't have any qualms about this. However, I have some concerns about how we're doing this. First of all, the two of the contributing features that I see as being very, very high on the list are the front entrance, which has been altered considerably, and as was mentioned in the report, the former exterior fireplace at the rear, which is now interior, and by virtue of which we have no authority over. It's not does not come under our purview, and the facade of the rear is in my estimation completely changed because of that. Where I would like to see a little more, to drill down a little bit, is under the items that staff has considered contributing and non-contributing. And what I wasn't able to one thing I wasn't able to ascertain is the wood shutters are considered contributing. Are they original, or are they, have they been replaced? Do you know?
I think we may ask Steve Bott to clarify that. My understanding is that those were original features, but we can.
Shutters would be original features, but the actual shutters themselves would be highly.
If it was a restored.
They could be replacement, but I'm just curious about that.
They are the original.
Yeah.
We can see if Steve Bott has some details on that.
Sort of going on while that's being checked into. Under contributing features, we have the blending of indoor and outdoor spaces. And if someone can sort of help me understand exactly what that is, because I did not see that. And that sort of dissolving the space between the interior and the exterior is a more modern architectural device. So I'm just curious about that. The covered patio is also called out as a contributing feature, and that seems confusing to me, since part of the patio that was covered has been extended, and it would not be a contributing feature, since it's not original. And then we have here the 1932 original residence, which I'm assuming that is to differentiate between the residence and the additional garage, but that wouldn't be necessarily clear to anyone reading this at another time. And then we have the original portion of the patio, covered patio with the rustic stone fireplace. I don't see that we have that as as part of our purview, even though I would love it if we did, because that fireplace is extraordinary and should be maintained. I don't have any issues with our current owners, but part of historic preservation is to care for something in perpetuity beyond maybe the original owner. So that is something else. The wood shutters, and then under non-contributing elements, it says non-original front door, and I think the entire entry is non-original and should be, and the way it reads now, it's just that front door, but that whole entry it needs to be called out, as well as the non-original covered patio extension, which I think is something that just for the purposes of this archival document needs to be reiterated a little more clearly. And I think that's it. Yes.
If I can add clarity to any of that, I'm happy to.
You want to answer first, and then if Steve wanted to add additional?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, you're the applicant. Do you want to come up and have a seat again, and then?
Well, let's see.
Okay.
And then we'll see if there's
Okay.
anything remaining.
Yeah, it's up to you on that.
There we go. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, great. Forgive me, Jeff, if you could remind me if I'm talking about something and I've missed it on what you said, because you covered several things. I want to make sure I don't miss any of it. And Steve can back me up or refute me on this, but it was, when it comes to the shutters themselves, the visual inspections of it were to indicate that they were original or appeared to be original, the shutters. And we also did the shutter dogs themselves, the wrought iron door hardware that we, the hardware that goes with it. That's based on vintage photo comparisons, which was nice to have, which often we don't. The other thing is that we did not list the front entry, as far as I can see, as a contributing element in our original nomination. It is not specific in our report because it has changed. It is my, as I think I mentioned on our site visit, it's my understanding or my belief that it was H.L. Hansen who had come in and who was part of the original contractor, who had come in and enclosed that in 1945 for the McDougalls. But the permit is vague, and so we can't very much be sure of that. The roof line is the same, but it was an open feature with lacy wrought iron around it, and a fascinating looking thing. But it has obviously been enclosed. We think it was in 1945. Again, we did not, as far as, unless I'm missing it, as I look back on contributing elements on our report, we did not list the entry itself as a contributing element. And the door, we wouldn't have done that either because it is not original with that. So I'm looking back at what I wrote, and I'm trying to see if I can see where that might have been, but I'm frankly not seeing it. The other thing is that on the covered patio, in our report, we said that the original portion of the covered patio with its rustic stone fireplace was what we considered a contributing element. We believe that the addition is something that is not permanent. It could be removed by a future owner, and therefore, with the original patio as it would have been in 1932, is still there. It's just there's that extra extension out in front of it, and so. We saw that as still remaining contributing because it is something that could be replaced or could be returned. And was that it? Were those I'm sorry, am I missing?
What I was going by was the draft resolution that we are discussing, as opposed to the original report contributing and non-contributing elements. So that explains part of that. And I was looking here to see whether you have in your report the blending of indoor and outdoor spaces.
Oh, yeah.
You could maybe explain that rationale.
Well, it's interesting how the modern style and the Spanish style do blend together with that on indoor outdoor. And what we mean by indoor outdoor is ease of access to the opening up the indoors to the outdoors. And in the particular case of, like in this Spanish style house, is that you have the house basically built around a courtyard, and then there are French doors everywhere that allow someone to walk literally just right in and right out from the indoors. Most of the time people were spending their time in the temperate weather outside, and the patio area was almost a constant in Spanish-style architecture, and people would use it as a living room, as sleeping and things. And so I think very much that the Spanish-style house, and this house in particular, is, and certainly was in 1932, a real blend of the indoor-outdoor look, or the feel, excuse me, of trying to bring the indoors outdoors and vice versa.
Thank you.
Can staff put the list of contributing and non-contributing elements that you had earlier on the screen? So, did staff modify the elements that, what is different from the report to what's now? What we have now?
Sometimes there are. I usually look at them side by side.
Yeah.
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
They're similar, but not identical.
What I heard you saying was that that we want to clarify on the character defining features that the covered patio, like the original portion of the covered patio, so that's the part that's covered with the Gladding McBean tile, roof tile, and then so that portion, clarifying that where it says covered patio, that it's the original portion of the covered patio, and then clarifying on the non-contributing elements that not only the non-original front door, but also the non-original enclosure, like entrance enclosure, is on the non-contributing elements. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, you can see that a covered patio is listed, and then further down it says the original portion of the covered patio with rustic stone fireplace. So is there some redundancy there? And if not, it needs clarification.
Okay. Yeah, we could just take off the covered patio and just go with the
Yeah.
original portion of the covered patio.
Right, right. Similarly, like on the non-original front door, you could say non-original entrance, including
Correct.
the front door.
Yeah.
Correct.
Would you like it to say enclosed entrance or just non-original entrance? You had mentioned enclosure. the
Yeah,
enclosure of the
it's now an anteroom almost. It's sort of open to air, but it's definitely
Still enclosed.
feels very different in character.
I think you had a,
No, I think it's definitely an
Preference.
enclosed, it's going from an open space to a closed space, but just emphasizing that the roof is original.
It's original.
That's the catch.
and then are we good with leaving the shutters as original features?
Yeah, I am. I'm amazed and delighted.
And then your other comment about the fireplace, there have been other instances where we have called out some sort of extraordinary features, even though they were interior in the character defining features. I'm okay with leaving that.
I am too.
We have done that in the past. It's just if somebody, did, want to do an interior, even though it's character defined, I mean, the whole idea is we'd want it to stay no matter what, right?
Correct.
I'm okay with leaving it because there is precedent for us adding in specifically some extraordinary interior features in with, both in the description and the character defining.
Well, my point was trying to do something that would, within our purview, even though we don't have any purview over the interior, but somehow acknowledge that this feature is there. Presumably, at some point in the future, if someone decided to change it and say remove the addition, then it would become that. But who would know that necessarily without something?
The chimney is really visible from the exterior.
So the question is,
And is
would we
exterior.
allow the reversal, is what you're saying? Would we, in the future, a future owner, be allowed to take
The cover off.
the cover that was added and the glass wall that was added and return it to its original?
Well, as a non-contributing
Yeah,
feature.
they
if-
should be.
We should have it worded so that they could do that. They could be reversed to its original configuration.
Well, if we would add to the non-contributing elements, the non-original covered patio extension, then that
Yeah.
is called
that-
out.
Yeah.
And it was,
Isn't that what it says there?
That's
what it says.
Composition roofed patio extension.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about? Yeah.
And then it would need the glass wall
Or
that was
would you say
created
including
also.
glass walls?
But part of those are original doors.
Yeah.
Not to slice it too
Yeah.
finely, but
Yeah.
it does. Would we allow someone
it says
to-
glass panels on patio extension.
Oh, okay.
And then
Okay,
on
that's not
the
in the-
character defining features, don't we have the wooden French doors? Aren't those like the wooden French doors? Should we just clarify also on the character defining features that that the ones that are on the,
That those are original and,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be protected.
because that is hard to
Yeah,
get
it's,
from this.
We might
We're doing
say
surgery.
something like, well, not really, like if maybe we said original doors that have been relocated on the building.
something like that. Can
Because
we
I think, yeah, you want to
possibly clarify?
come up and have a seat, yeah.
Join the
Sarah, are you
argument.
getting all this down?
It is.
I'm
It's
writing
stone
it.
Tremendous.
around.
It is.
It's stone around.
It's a tricky thing.
I used to be on the Hollywood Design Review Committee of Eric Garcetti's District 13 for about a decade, so I really appreciate this kind of drilling down. You're absolutely justified and you're right to do it, so. But I did want to say that regarding the patio, number one, the door entry, you're right, but it is the original footprint and it is significantly the original roof and the original floor, which is stamped concrete, and beautiful stamped concrete.
Very good.
So it's got a brick surround, which is all new, and you're right to do that. As far as, it's a little confusing to me, and I think it's an issue because the defining feature of that fireplace in the back, nothing has changed. The walls, the fireplace, everything is exactly as it was when it was originally built. And the wall that encloses it is all glass. So that could be taken back to its source very easily, and maybe it should at some point. And the covered patio over there is just, it's almost like a temporary thing. We have checked for authenticity based on a lot of photographs that were left, thank goodness. And I marvel at how these doors have been preserved. Somebody really took care to, instead of getting new doors, they moved them from the living room to there. So anyway, just hope that clarifies a little bit. And I think if it should be a defining feature, and it should still be an exterior feature because that's what it originally was, even if there is glass in front of it now. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I would also like to say that the Snyders themselves made changes. And that is evidenced by the fact that we have a record from it literally being built with, the making the bricks and the carpentry to the final showing of it by a professional photographer taking pictures, and then movies subsequently. And the most obvious example of this is the very front gate that you enter through. It was a wood gate. By the end of the Snyders being there, it was a metal gate. So they were changing things themselves as they went. And I don't know what was done when and where exactly, but we try to recreate that as much as we possibly can along the way. So
One more quick question.
Sure.
Getting really drilling down here. We have a rustic stone fireplace. Is the fireplace trimmed with stone and otherwise that kind of adobe sort of masonry? Or yeah, so it, okay, in other words, a stone fireplace to me, I visually envision something totally different.
it's as much of a stone fireplace now as it was originally. And in fact, when you look at the construction, they have those stones there and then just flat metal panels surrounding it. So, and then all we did for the top of the fireplace is had been plastered over, and we chipped all the plaster off, and it just fell away.
I'm just wondering if it should be described as a rustic stone and masonry fireplace.
That is what it is. So
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely correct.
You get that one, Sarah?
Rustic stone and masonry.
Got it. Cool.
And I don't know that the masonry wasn't cast on site. I
Yeah,
would guess
yeah.
it probably was. And I'd also guess it's reinforced because Tanner was the curator of the Mission Inn in the 1914 for about 10 years. And that was just when they had built what they call their Spanish Gallery, and it was a pioneering use of poured concrete structure. And that's what the Desert Inn was, and they had the 30s earthquakes and all of that disaster. So I have from what I've read, little tidbits here and there, I can't speak for certain, but the Desert Inn was earthquake resistant, and I believe ours is. It's just, you have to go in and knock down walls to find out.
Or just wait for an earthquake.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, we have no choice. Earthquake latches on everything, I can tell you, and a
Don't
lot of
forget the
putty.
quake hold.
Yes, most of it we did. You just picked the one place where we didn't have it, on that fireplace.
That's my
map
job.
We're talking about. Any other questions?
Thank
Are
you.
we good?
Thank you.
Thank you. So did you want to have any clarification on that the entrance footprint and floor are original?
Well as the cover, that's original as well.
Yes.
So it's just the infill
Yeah.
It's the walls.
Correct.
that
And
is,
the wall and the door.
and yes, that should be clarified.
Candace, did you-
So, yeah, so first off, I was fascinated by this report. I just, more so than any other report I've read, I found this one to be really interesting. Mostly because I do tours for the Historical Society, and this talked about all the people I talk about on the tours. Two questions. One is, in the entryway, where there now is that almost vestibule with the door, just inside that, there is an entryway with the wrought iron.
Yes.
Was that originally a door that the wrought iron got put there at some point?
Yes, that's correct.
Because that wrought iron mimics what he had done in the Desert Inn.
And that was the point. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, and then my other point is about the chimney. I think it was called out in the report, that very ornate capping. And I don't see it here as a, my opinion is that capping should be added.
And that stone matches the fireplace.
Yeah, especially
That's a
since
key
it-
tie-in.
Just clarify a couple things. So for the main entry, I have the main entry feature including the stamped floors and roof covering. Is that,
Yeah.
And the footprint.
Are the
and the original footprint?
is the patio, sorry, the front entry also stamped concrete?
It is stamped concrete.
And that's original as well?
Yes.
Okay, and that's also the same on the patio, what's now enclosed?
No, that is
No.
not original.
Okay.
That is a terrazzo that I don't know when it was added, but yeah. I wish it was original, but it's not.
And then I believe member Vanessa wanted to add the chimney.
Yeah.
So the chimney feature with the masonry stuff.
Does that work for everybody?
And then I had patio door, adding that the patio doors that are on the enclosed, the now enclosed patio are the original exterior doors that, I don't know how to say it, how to say
They
that.
were just moved forward.
They were just bumped out
Yeah,
with the enclosure.
exactly.
Yeah,
Which I appreciate.
and deleting that sort of repetition of covered patio on the character defining features.
Yes.
So, yep, so covered patio has been deleted. And I'll read through this one more time just so
Yeah.
that we can make sure the corrected. For the original doors that have been relocated, those are the ones that you're talking about in terms of the patio?
Well, there were several
There were-
that have been relocated, correct? Not
Well-
just those two on the patio?
The two on the patio, when Rod Taylor redid the home, the east side didn't have any doors. When they built the garage and the new garage and the studio, they took the original garage doors, moved them off to the side. And they also cut into the maid's room, for lack of a better term, they cut a doorway there. They took the front door and moved that to there.
So I think, I don't know, do we need to specify every location, or can we say original doors that have been relocated, in various locations?
Is that outlined in the report specifically,
I
those three
I
locations?
think those details are in the report.
They are in the.
We
Specifically.
can ask,
They are.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You had brought up, I think, the various French doors, and if I remember right from the site visit, a lot of those French doors are in the bedrooms. Like you were describing, the doors to the now enclosed patio was the actual front door to the house. But like what you were describing, the doorway added to the, but when we did the walk through the, what we thought was probably servants' quarters, maid's room, whatever, that is like the French door that was probably not original or maybe was moved from somewhere else in the house.
Well, the maid's room was where the front door was moved to. The master bedroom is the original French doors, so that one is the same. And then, yeah.
And then are you good with the, in terms of the blending of the indoor-outdoor, I liked the way Mr. Vaught had also sort of talked about, because I agree with you, we often think of that in terms of mid-century modern and glass, and, you know, the ease of access from the inside to the outside, I thought was a good phrase.
That describes it better
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Ease of access, he said, from indoor to outdoor spaces. Ease of movement and access.
Circulation, whatever.
I don't mind the way it's written out personally.
Yeah, it's
but-
okay. I'm not objecting to it, but as long as he had said that, I thought it was, it was very apropos to that particular house. It's a very complicated property. There's a lot going on there. Well, I would like to congratulate you for being stewards of that property and previous property owners, but, yeah, that's a challenge, and you've taken it on, so. Any other comments from the board members?
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Sarah, is there any way that we can officially make the interior fireplace, because it was an exterior piece,
Originally.
a part that's protected? Or is now that it's become interior, it's not ultimately protectable?
So the way our ordinance is written today, we don't have purview over interior spaces. So when exterior spaces get internalized, it does kind of fall into that interior space. I think what I would recommend doing, and we've done in the past, is where we would identify character defining features, indicate that they are interior so that they can be placed when somebody reads this document, they understand where it's located. And having this as a living document of identifying, hey, this is an important feature for future owners to know, hey, let's protect this, but it wouldn't be protected under the full ordinance. But I think that the initial call out of it does quite a bit, so that people can read this document and
It might
understand it's an important.
at least become a discussion point in the future if someone wanted to mess with it. Okay, that's what I want.
Please protect it.
Yeah.
But the top part of the chimney is
It
exterior.
is exterior, that's
Yeah.
why
So-
it's really important to go
That-
ahead and delineate.
Yeah.
Can, so if you really wanted to get rid of the fireplace on the inside, you'd have to figure out a way
Yeah.
to do it in a way that
Right.
the exterior, that top portion of it was gonna remain on the house. So good luck to whoever wants to do that later on.
Well, and whoever the
but-
board is at that point, we can just count on them to.
Can it
Just
be,
like to say it's already been modified once and we had to take it all off. So that happens.
But I do think it is important to add the chimney as a separate feature too.
Yeah.
Because it is an exterior feature, it does have a design, and it is missing, and I think that it is important to call that out separately.
for the, to your point, for the interior, what is now an interior fireplace, can it be listed as the formerly exterior fireplace? So we kind of cover that.
Very good. Yeah.
Boy, you guys are thorough.
We just love the fireplace.
Well, pretty amazing. Anybody else? Are we ready for a motion? Do we have some more comments?
Just one clarification.
Yes. Oh, do you want to read those for
I
everybody?
do.
For the motion?
Yes,
Okay.
and I just want to make sure, did the board want to change blending of indoor-outdoor space to ease of move and access, or keep it? Yes.
Yes.
So that, okay, great. So I'm just going to read the red line changes
Okay.
that the board has made to the character defining the character defining features as well as the non-contributing elements. Under character defining feature, ease of move and access from the indoor and outdoor spaces. We have removed covered patio for it being a repetitious item, and then added main entry feature including the stamped concrete floors, the roof cover and footprint of the entry. And then for the fireplace, it's been amended to say original portion of the covered patio with rustic stone and masonry. Let's see, formerly exterior fireplace. And then original chimney feature with masonry stone has been added, and then original doors that have been relocated as a general add-on. And then under non-contributing elements, we have clarified non-original front door to say non-original enclosure with front door.
Okay.
Are there any other moments or things that I've skipped or missed?
Good job. Okay. Anybody is everybody good with what Sarah just read? Or? Okay. Are we ready then, Sarah? You're good? Okay. So, may I have a motion?
I'll move to close the public hearing and adopt Resolution HSPB number 176 to recommend that the City Council designate the Snyder Residence a historic Class 1 site, HSPB number 176, and make a determination pursuant to CEQA that this action is not a project, with the conditions that our historic preservation officer has read into the record.
You want us the amended character defining and non-contributing features?
Yes, with the amended character defining and non-contributing features.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. And
I
we
will
have
second.
and we have a second. Okay, we have a motion then by Board Member Mashka Hitchcock and a second by Board Member Payanesa. Is there any further discussion on that? All right, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 7-0.
Congratulations.
And thank you to the board for that, good discussion. And there was a lot to see, and it's, it's nice to have board members that everybody sees a little bit something different and has a little bit of a different perspective. So I feel really good about that resolution. The importance of the resolutions, that's what city council is ultimately going to approve, but also in the future, when there are changes, those features are what the staff would be looking at, and a future board members, or maybe the current board members, regarding any changes to the building. So that's why it's important to have that level of detail on a property like that. All right, we have no unfinished business, and I will move on to new business. The first item is the owner submitted application for a request for a certificate of appropriateness minor to install shade structures at the Palm Springs International Airport, case number CAMI 2026-0003. Maybe have the staff report, please.
The next item is a request for a certificate of appropriateness minor at the airport facilities, address 3400 East Topwoods. The Palm Springs International Airport is a designated local landmark. It's also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The airport has undergone various scales of expansion since its completion in 1966 by the architect Donald Wetzler. The area that has the area that is being impacted by the proposed scope of work is shown here in red on the screen. Of course, these images were in your packet. This slide is showing the current conditions of the area at a more pedestrian level. While the proposed scope of work is considered a minor alteration, the request for change has been brought to the board for review. A significant increase in, of course, passenger activity and at the airport, and the apparent need for a safe and comfortable waiting area is certainly seen as a priority. The proposed shade structures are intended to enhance and improve the current conditions for passengers and visitors to the Palm Springs Airport and the Palm Springs area. And the location where the locations that have been identified for where the shade structures are to be located does avoid the core access of the Wexler terminal with the intent to reduce any visual or material impacts to the building and the site. The 4 structures are proposed along a pedestrian median to the south end of the terminal in front of what is now the ticketing area. So the design of the proposed shade structure shows a heavy structure with a pyramidal shaped canopy. That does not have any design elements that really relate to the historic detailing of the original airport design. The Wexler terminal utilizes a much more simple post and beam design. The deeper overhangs actually provides a natural location of shade under the canopy of the eave of the building. So that's something that we're looking at and considering as a feature that's original to the building itself. And then when you see this in elevation and the side view, the shape of the canopy that's being proposed does consist of a bit more of a complex geometry. Again, that doesn't relate to some of the simple forms we see in the original design of the site. An example of shade structures that do a better job that are actually on the airport premises that relates better to the original design are the shade structures that we actually see on the secured side of the airport along the pathway when you're walking towards the Agua Caliente concourse. The post and beam structures are closer in design and what is seen than closer in design to what we see around the Wexler terminal. And of course, the roof form of this structure is a lot more simple. It's created with that stretch fabric, but it doesn't create any sort of distinct forms that we don't see on the site. And the other thing is that it doesn't draw additional attention to the feature itself. It's important that the functionality of the feature works, but it's also important that the feature itself is integrated into the space without creating its own architectural language to the site. Again, what we're noting is that the location of the new structures at the front would be highly visible. We have 4 criterion that are listed in our ordinance addressing proposed alterations to designated sites. As you all know, just because you're designated, it doesn't mean that no change can happen. It's really making sure that any sort of change is in character and harmonious with the historic resource. Staff finds that the proposed location of the 4 shade structures to be appropriate because it is a location that significantly reduces visual and material impact to character defining features that have been identified, but recommends a redesign of the structure itself to be ones that maybe to the one that has been previously identified on the secured side. Since the original design never included additional shade structures for waiting passengers and travelers, the new structure should take design cues from the original design of the terminal to be a bit more compatible. So staff finds that with a conditioned approval for the proposed structures, it would be able to meet the alteration criterias, and that is what we are proposing, a recommendation of approval with the conditions that are listed here. It's really to revise the design of the shade structure to be in kind or much more similar to the existing structures that were identified on the secured side. And that final design should be reviewed and approved at that staff level for the final design compatibility. With that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And the airport team is here to answer any questions if you have any questions.
I just have a question about the existing ones that you had shown before. Did those go through a design review process?
That's a great question.
And do you know about when those were put there? I was just wondering if it had already gone through a board review at a previous time.
Well,
I doubt it.
because of its location, I don't have a case file for
Okay.
a review of these structures. That doesn't mean it didn't go through a separate minor architectural review based on the location. But it doesn't have a historic review that it went through, and that's probably in relation to where it's located on the site.
So just to summarize, it seems like your recommendation is to kind of scrap what was submitted. And
In terms of the design
the
of the structure.
location is okay, but the design is not. And to have them work with you based on something more in line with that and have it reviewed at a staff level.
Correct.
Can you go back a slide to the, or one more, please?
Yeah.
So in terms of the post and beam, it is similar, but are they proposing that blue?
No,
It's-
no.
The color is
Oh,
down
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That- I
It
was
jarred
re-
me immediately
I
at
was
first
getting
too.
really hung up on that, sorry, thank you.
No, the color of the actual fabric would be a sand color, so it wouldn't be that jarring in terms of a color.
Yeah.
How about the structure? The older version looks more bronze, this looks black. Is that specified anywhere? Or is that just a result of?
This is probably a result of just the graphic that's provided in the catalog. Let me see if we.
I didn't see it called out, but this looks black and the other does look more bronze or more, I think a little more appropriate.
Not so dark and
Not so
stark.
hard, yeah.
And those are obviously, characters and details that we can specify for something like this.
Great.
Other questions for staff? We can call the airport team up in a minute, but let's finish with staff comments first.
Well, I guess the two major differences are, from what I can see, the ones in the rear, the part that sticks out here, but this part is, right? Can you show what the existing ones look like?
You see them side by
Yeah.
side.
It's more of a
would be
T.
nice.
So it has this end sticking out, whereas this other one doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know which is more appropriate for the design of the airport. But I mean, if you look at some of the work that Wexler's done in residential, he calls those things dog legs or spider legs, and they don't have elements like this or like that. It would just be clean, like a typical Neutra style or Wexler style dog leg or spider leg.
It looks like it might be the way that the canopy's installed. If you look at the existing, you can see a cable going back to that
But I wonder
projecting
if you
element.
move the shade a little bit further, you can make the connection. I'm not an engineer, and these wonderful people in the back, I'm sure, can explain that. But, I mean, right?
Yeah, no,
You
there's
move
no
this
reason.
Forward, can this be
Slide it
attached
that
here?
18 inches
Oh.
forward. There might be some, but I can't imagine why. Wind, uplift, something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we can
Yeah.
ask them.
Catherine, did you?
I have questions for the
Okay.
airport team.
Are we ready to hear from the team? Okay. Want to come on up and you can both if you want.
We'll get the engineer in here.
Identify yourselves and
Well, thank you for having us tonight. Good evening, Chair and members of the Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Nikki Gomez, the airport planner, and this project has been, kind of up and coming for probably years now, and now it's kind of coming into fruition here before you. And of course, probably there's no discussion that there's a need, and with our concentration on consumer service, that with the even with the high usage of the TNC, meaning the Uber and our ride-share program, that's where our large percentage of usage is. And so the need for the covered area to kind of provide our guests with a comfortable experience, has been kind of in our forefront. So we appreciate you seeing our project here. And yes, so in context though, USA Shade is here that kind of provided that kind of structural detail for for the commission, and he does have some context as to exactly what this is. We visited this specific area as to kind of the revised recommendation that was requested upon us, and of course, our lens is through kind of the customer experience, and we rely on yours to provide us with some design elements that could be integrated, and we are absolutely completely open to that, and there are some changes that are absolutely possible with that, and so maybe you could comment on some of those details.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Dakota Shelton. I'm with USA Shade, so I'm the vendor that kind of like that first slide you're looking at. So I think you're mentioning like the two different structure sized. Like one's a true cantilever, and the one that is existing at the airport is a T cantilever. The difference being this one, this is called a winged cable T cantilever. So it's tensioned without any roofing sections, which that doesn't mean anything in regards to an engineering standpoint. Like that doesn't change. Can we do it? Can we not do it? We create structures like this all the time. This is just more like like what you saw before was a standard structure that we can ship out in 6 weeks, and we kind of turn and burn on those ones. Whereas this is more on a custom side because we want to know how much we want that T cantilever to go. And when you T cantilever, the connection points are a little different. This is going to be turnbuckle on a wing cable cantilever, meaning that like there's going to be buckles in the corner and you would turn them. Yes, sir.
You put that in English. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah. So can I? Like if you were looking at the attachment pieces, like meaning like a buckle that it would turn, and as it turns, it tightens the fabric.
Okay.
Whereas on like the structure that was initially shown, this has a roofing frame, so it doesn't have a turnbuckle that's going to pull it. It still has cable tension around, but it has pinpoints that are going to then pull the weight through that roofing frame that's in there. That's why one has an elevated roof, the other one's flat. Both engineering requirements, they have to still be able to withstand the wind load that's required for the city. So maybe on this structure, your column sizes, maybe they're 2 inches smaller in diameter. We don't know that until we go through the engineering process, but can we create a structure that's identical to what's existing at the airport that's a cabled T cantilever? Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. Go ahead.
My question is why this structure and instead of the flat structure, was the conclusion of staff and USA Shade that this would provide the most amount of coverage, shade coverage, it would be the most utilitarian?
Right. The science study kind of showed that this would maximize the amount of shade that we could possibly attain, considering the placement of it, knowing the placement of the challenge of that, yes.
And doing something like the existing shade structures on the interior of the airport would reduce the amount of shade coverage?
It would be fractional. Because they're both like the footprint's the same, right? Like it's still, in this, I think we were projecting a 22 foot by 14 foot, so the footprint wouldn't change whether it's a T cantilever or just that's a full hip cantilever that's being depicted there. The footprint of the shade coverage isn't necessarily going to change because the footprint, like the square footage is still the same, but we won't know exactly how much it will shrink with a cable because of the connection point. Whereas like this one's going to be pulled all the way to the pin. On a winged cable, there's going to be a turnbuckle, so you could lose maybe a foot of shade coverage, but it would be minimal on that sidewalk or that area, like the pickup area where you're seeing it.
And does that also change, like when it, like the when it is in shade? Like, does it also with a flat versus this, like sort of hipped pyramidal shape? Does it change like? When if the sun is over here, then it gets less shade, or then it's over here, it gets.
Yeah, very minimal. And the reason being is because like it's going to be at that entry point that we're looking at. So like let's say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're looking at where at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is at that entry point. Because the top of a hip cantilever structure like this, like the entry point we have it at 13. The top of it, the peak of it is going to be an additional 24 to 28 inches. So we're not looking at the shade coverage based on the peak. We're looking at on the entry height. So entry height on both would be the same. So your shade coverage should be realistically like the same.
So are the vertical pieces, are those on the west of that sidewalk?
It would be on, I think we were gonna go on the east side of it, but now that we're doing, because we were initially gonna do this cantilever without the T, but now that we're moving the T, I mean, that could be, it's interchangeable.
Okay, and I guess, because I was thinking exactly, I think where you were going, depending on how they're placed, I was wondering the same thing. Does that shape, when the sun's in the summer at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it's going to be at a point in the sky, whereas is none of that shade going to be on the sidewalk, and it's going to be actually in the lanes?
Yeah, so when you're looking at shade coverage, 6 p.m. is it's a moot point, because it's the same for everyone. Where you're not shading, like that's not a time of the day you're trying to shade. I'm trying to shade from 11 a.m., 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., 4 p.m. That's when your peak, your hot temperatures. That's when people are trying to shade. So when you're looking at shade coverage, it's then. The reality with shade, the sun's at 6 p.m., the shade projection is going to be different. So, regardless of where you put the columns, because we're covering that sidewalk, the columns could be on the east side, it could be in the center, it could be on the west side. The footprint that's being covered is still the same. So at 6 p.m., we're still going to be covering that drive path a little bit. You're going to get minimal shade coverage. But at your peak time of the day, where it's the hottest point, like that, where the sun's directly over you, that's where you're going to get the maximum amount of shade coverage. And, that's where, we're trying to, that's the area that we try to sell into as shade companies. We're trying to show you in that space, in your peak times, that's when we're going to provide the most shade coverage.
That all absolutely makes sense to me. I guess my question then would be, is that the time where you need the most shade based on what you see at the airport?
So typically our peak hours are 10 to 2.
All right, so.
I wanted one of these 2 weeks ago. It's funny. Literally, I was literally thinking about it. I was getting my lift and I was like, it is freaking hot. Like, I wish there was a shade structure right here.
Yeah.
So.
Question for you about the covering material and the substructure. Why is that more effective in terms of the wind blowing compared to the internal existing cover, which seems very loose and very flappable, and this looks quite set? What impact is the wind going to have with that? Is it going to be somebody rip off? How do you protect that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you're looking at a flatter structure on a cable, the tension point is going to pull that tension throughout the fabric. So it's not going to lead to an increased tearing versus something with a roofing structure like that. Our fabric is an HDPE mesh, and that's pretty standard in the industry, and it has a 10-year manufacturer warranty. And then a lot of the fabric should last you 13, 14 years, and that's kind of like the industry average that we're seeing in the low desert, the Coachella Valley. And if you get more into the Inland Empire, maybe you're getting 15, 16 years out of the fabric, but it's not gonna, your lifespan of the fabric isn't gonna change based on something flat versus that roofing structure. Because the important thing is making sure that you have tension within the fabric. When there's not tension, then that's when fabrics tear. And I did point out on this existing one, it's kind of interesting. You can't see it in the image, but when I did my site walk today, there's a little slot that seemed like it was cut into each fabric, and this isn't my company's fabric, so I can't tell you why. Why is that slit in there? And I hope to get an answer on that.
So in the material that you're proposing, is it a mesh so the wind blows through it and it's just not going to block the wind?
Exactly, it's an HDPE mesh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Which is that's a mesh material as well.
You're aware that we have tremendous windstorms here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have existing structures at the airport, and this isn't like a new area for us. We're not just expanding into into Palm Springs and Coachella Valley. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of shade structures throughout the low desert, and so we step up to the plate every time. We build a quality product. It's going to last.
Despite the fact you're from DFW Airport in Texas.
there too.
Yeah. But yeah, we could create something just like this. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Any
I have
more
a
questions for this team? Okay.
Actually,
I'm going to let them go sit down if you're.
I just have one more, and this is kind of
Let's focus
random,
on design.
but are you working at all on with the city on the shade structures, they're talking about for connecting the convention center to the downtown core.
We have had some projects there, yeah.
And the reason I ask that is, like, if that design is what it ends up being, is that going to be consistent in the city?
I think that just varies on project, truthfully. I know it's kind of like a cop-out answer, but it does.
Well, it's more up to the city.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can't
Yeah.
give me a definitive, but.
Yeah, and some structures become more custom on the design, and, yeah, so it's hard to say.
Okay, thank you. If we have any more.
Thank you all for your time.
We did have a speaker on this, Nikki. Is it McLaughlin?
McLaughlin, yes.
I'm going to have her come up because I think it's a little.
Sorry, I guess I should have been at the beginning.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm
State
actually
your
here.
name and affiliation.
Nikki McLaughlin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Palm Springs Modern Committee. And I agree with everything you're doing, and I love the fact that you've rejected this choice, because I personally feel it's far too heavy-handed. And what I wanted to bring to you, I don't know how familiar you all are with Don Wexler's work, but I brought a copy for each of you. These are two residential examples that show his work. One is the Left Florsheim house and one is the Dinah Shore.
Sarah, are you?
You're minus one. And I'd like to keep them with you, you two for the record.
Probably give them some to
Maybe
them.
to the airports.
Here.
I'm familiar. I'm familiar.
Oh, you're
with
familiar with
these
these
houses,
areas.
yeah. So they can, yeah.
Okay, so
Sarah, are we doing 3 minutes? Yeah.
when you actually look at these close up, they're 3 inches by 5 inches, those coasts. And it brings a certain elegance to the look, which I think is incredibly important for the airport. I attended the meeting last night at the Plaza Theatre, and the growth is going to be phenomenal. So, I mean, I'm very much pro-growth, and actually it's what Don wanted too. It's how he designed the airport, was to grow. So it's really just finding that fine line of something that complements the terminal. So that's this is my idea of how it could be done. I drove around trying to find these. I didn't realize they were on the interior. And what I would like to know is what the dimensions are for these here.
Those?
The ones that currently exist, because they still look too heavy. And I think possibly it's the black color.
Yeah, I think we can't entertain your questions. If a board member would like to know that when you're done with your 3 minutes,
Okay.
then we can carry that on a little further. But yeah, you have the 3 minutes, sorry, for public comment.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So are you interested in discussing these further, or?
I mean, can the engineering team address it in any way, or is it too soon based on what you just got now?
Yeah, it'd be too slow. Sorry, when I was speaking.
If you don't mind. I think I probably will have to take it back with me for review.
I do have, I think, a good question, though, is what are the dimensions of that compared to what was proposed here tonight?
Just approximate, I think it's much smaller than what was proposed tonight because of that.
That is
tension.
smaller.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, this is smaller.
Yeah.
So certainly, we could send that back for review.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to, comment,
To this
if I
team.
can, just
Yeah,
because
sure.
I
Have a
do
seat.
sell shade structures.
Well,
Show the blue- Can you switch to the blue one, or did you want to keep showing that one?
Yeah, this is perfect. And then I think the important thing to distinguish is you're looking at something that's a joined structure on what's existing there. And then, I'm looking at this is also a joined structure, right? So when you're looking at joined structures, I know column inches were mentioned. Well, that's going to be smaller on a joined structure because you're sharing the engineering load. When you're looking at I don't know the footprint of this, but I'm assuming a sidewalk, it's by 6 feet. So, the column sizes on this, yeah, they're going to be the perception is of a smaller size, but you can't compare a freestanding structure that's not sharing any engineering weight load capacity to something that has a joint structure.
Joint structure means it's connected to the wall.
Yeah, no,
It's joined.
this is, yeah, absolutely.
That's what you mean.
But I mean joined in like, you have like
Here.
continuous columns, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5. So you're joining all of,
Oh, I
like,
see.
all that engineering weight is spread out throughout there.
As opposed to
As opposed to just two
Yeah,
columns,
that's
like,
just-
Yeah.
but even on this, I can create a structure very similar to this, and we can have fun with it if you wanted a different face or just the cable. But, just being a T structure, like, those columns are gonna be smaller than what we would be able to put out front because we're not sharing any weight loads across it. Yeah. I just want to answer, I just thought that was.
Yeah, that was important, thank you.
Chair, I'm with the airport.
Oh, okay,
Just one
yeah.
last comment from us.
Yeah.
Just to give some, thank you
Oh,
so much.
can you give us your name?
Yeah, my name is Harman Singh. I'm the project manager at the
Okay.
Palm Springs Airport. Just to give some background, first of all, these structures are very much needed because last ridership at TNC, we had about 400,000 people. That is about 33,000 persons every month, and also about 2,700 people every hour. That if it's a 12-hour window. Second thing is that these are funded by Measure J funds, and we are trying to work on design to budget. We have certain amount of Measure J monies that has been all allocated to this. It's a certain amount that we are expecting this money to be spent, so that we can definitely look into some other design and everything. So another critical item is that with working with the USA Shade Structure, we want to also expedite the project if we can provide it as soon as possible. We did look into a design and more like a cater to our need, and we did a very upfront conceptual design, and the numbers that were coming just to design it for us only with some really fabricated and some really beautiful structure, we were looking at about $1.9 million just for 4 structures.
Compared to what?
Compared to, this is, I think our allocation for Measure J is about $750K, and we are expecting it to be completed by that. So conceptual design was so heavy that we haven't even went into like a deep design, schematic design, or other aspects of the design to start this project. So that's why we are looking into design to budget with the Measure J funds that are allocated to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think what we should do as a group is see what specific guidelines you might want to pass on to Sarah, who would continue the process. Like if you're willing to, just let staff handle it, or if there are some specific things you don't want to see, do you not want the shape of that awning? Do you want it to look just like that? Maybe just some guidelines for her if she's going to go and do some further negotiations.
I'm willing to pass it as is.
Me too.
I think that this is, we're looking at temperatures of 120 plus degrees. We have tons of, tens of thousands of people coming through this airport all the time. These aren't in the front of the airport either, which I would even approve them probably in the front of the airport as well. They're as our project manager over here explained the cost element to this, these are removable. These are structures that they're not attached to anything original. They're things that have a 10, 15 year lifespan of that fabric, that could be reevaluated in 10 to 15 years. I think these are absolutely necessary, and I'd love to see the airport team keep going with this project.
Maybe just one question on because you had mentioned kind of the black. We established they're not going to be blue, but the structure itself, this might be a question for the team. Are there, maybe a less stark or
Something
heavy,
softer.
a softer color?
Bronze or
Would possible?
chocolate or
Yes,
something more
that's a
desert.
yes.
Great.
Okay.
I'll go for, okay, I would be in favor of something more discreet. The pyramid is bigger than I think it needs to be to provide the shade, so my directive would be just more discreet in the spirit of what the existing is, not necessarily copying it, but just a quieter visual experience rather than a distinct roof structure would be my thought.
And you're willing to pass it on to staff?
Yeah, because we have a reference point
Yeah.
to begin with. Yeah, I don't want to slow it down. I think
Right.
we have something that's in the spirit of what I'm thinking, but not necessarily match that exactly, but aim for something more like that.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure what you mean by as proposed, if you mean the proposal that staff has proposed in terms of revising the shade structure, then yes, I would be happy to go with that.
So I think Catherine was saying she's happy with as they actually proposed it.
Yeah.
No,
You're
I'm-
suggesting
That's
a
what I'm
softer
saying.
version, leave it to staff.
Visually
You're suggesting a
Yeah.
softer. leave it to
Yes,
staff. Okay,
I do.
okay.
I have a, can I?
One
can I-
more, yeah.
Question for the, I'm wondering if is there a non-custom, as we're talking about, or a non-version that is a flat roof, that's like a flat roof structure, that's not that pyramid roof?
Yes, but keep in mind, we're referencing a T cantilever, so when you become a T cantilever, we just got to figure out where that column's gonna go, and that makes it custom. If I was just having like an
Okay.
existing cantilever with the columns on the back, I'm not saying projected with that roof, but I could, if the column is in the back, then that doesn't change anything, but, we're doing a T cantilever, so when you do a T cantilever, we need to figure out, based on the site, based on the sidewalk, where, is it 24 inches, 36, but that's not gonna change a whole lot on the engineering side of extending that project. We'll be able to move that really quickly, because we're
But-
just moving the column.
But it would increase the cost
No,
to
no,
that? No. Oh, okay, cool.
No.
Then I'm on board with.
Yes. Board Member
I'm
McCready.
totally in favor of the project. We need it. Having stood out there in the heat, I'm excited that you're going to do this. My question is, if you reduce the thickness of the vertical and the horizontal black or bronze or whatever color you choose, if it's smaller, does that impact the durability of the roof? Is it enough to support it when heavy, heavy wind, as Peter said? We know how windy it is over there.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna engineer something that's gonna be structurally like a liability later on. So, we can always look at we're not gonna put out these massive columns that don't make sense. We're gonna engineer it and we're gonna put out what's safe. So I don't know how large the column size is based on the existing, one that's within the airport security side. I can't imagine it's gonna be that much of a variance. But when we talk about reduction, we're not gonna compromise the work for that. So it's gonna be, ensuring that we have the integrity to be able to put in that premium product that we believe that we have in the market space.
I think the issue of the Measure J funds and the cost is unfortunate in the sense that there's nothing custom that can be done without increasing the costs. And they don't have the money. So even though this might be aesthetically a much more appropriate design, then they would have to design it. And then they can't afford it. So this stage, given what everyone's saying about the heat and the misery, yeah, I'd have to agree with everyone else.
To do an alternate design,
To the,
to leave it to staff.
yes, but with his concept of it being more
Okay,
flat.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think,
Sorry.
it sounds like we are going to go with staff's recommendation to approve the request with conditions.
Adding the bronze.
I'm sorry, with conditions to be verified and approved by staff,
Based on our recommendations.
based on our discussion today. We're not making any, as far as I could tell, we're not making specific recommendations. She's got our comments.
Okay.
Sarah, what are we doing?
So the recommendations that were provided in the packet, reread, is to revise the design of the shade structure. The language here, it says to be in kind with existing structures on the secured side. It sounds like that's maybe not the exact direction. We can amend that. What I've heard is some details related to the actual shape. So kind of removing a pyramidal structure, being more flat. And then I heard conditions about the color of the actual structures themselves to be not black, but maybe a darker brown, bronze, a softer color. Those are the only two comments that I've heard. Are there any clarifying comments related to, and I think Member Maruzzi mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the shape of the actual support itself? I mean, do we want to kind of leave that to how the design works out with just those two elements. The flatter, it sounds like it's going to be more of a tension-related structure, and then allow that to dictate what the actual structure looks like. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is closer to that than the existing one with the part that sticks
Yes,
out.
and more simplified.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that this can be done within budget.
Well, we will.
We're not supposed to consider budget anyway. I know
Well, that
practically
matters
we
to me as a
do.
tax-
You were
and it
nodding,
does.
though. There was a lot of nodding back there.
I know, but technically, we're supposed to look at
No, I
the
agree.
design, and I know practically, we all want to not do something
Yeah,
that's
I think the intent
ridiculous.
is to take the kind of overarching design comments and see what we can do with the team and the consultant
Yeah.
to get to as
You get
close
to
to
a
a solution
place,
as possible.
agreeable. So we're not necessarily saying in kind, we're maybe just compatible with,
In the spirit
in the
of.
spirit of, I like that one.
Just like the flat, I think it's mostly the flat roof rather than
Yeah.
the hipped roof, and then the color.
And minimal structure.
I think
Yeah.
the color's probably not that much of an issue.
Nah.
As long as it's not dark black.
And the
Yeah.
color of the awning was nice, it was fine. Just not blue.
Not very blue.
Definitely not blue.
All right, so does someone want to turn all that into a motion?
Okay. Yes. I move that we approve the recommendation by staff for the revision of design of shade cover with the in-kind existing shade, and that the final design be reviewed and approved by staff for the pedestrian walkway at the Kirk Douglas Way Airport for shade structures.
We're removing in kind,
Okay.
just compatible with or in the spirit of.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Do we have a,
Second.
do you have that, Sarah, before I do a second?
I'm sorry, can I review
Yes,
the
please. Let's
language,
do that.
just so it'll be clear for me, because you guys are giving this direction to me, and I want to be sure that I'm doing
Yeah.
this correctly. So what I have is revise the design of the shade structure in spirit with the original design to address, let's see, minimal structure, a flat roof, and a color that is compatible, we'll just say. And then final design to be reviewed and approved by staff for design compatibility.
Yes.
That sounds good.
Okay. So we had that motion by Board Member Hare and a second by Board Member Bach. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you all for coming. Does anybody need a quick break? Everybody's good? No? Yeah? Nobody's screaming.
I'm good.
Okay, the second item under new business is for a certificate of appropriateness minor requested by the owner to make exterior changes to the Class 1 site of 457 North Palm Canyon Drive, case number CAMI 2026-0004. Staff report, please.
Better turn around again. All those in the back of my head.
This way.
While we're waiting for that, we do have more comments coming. If we can make sure everyone comes to the front, I think
Yeah.
that we have
So we can hear it.
in the frame. Otherwise,
Uh-huh.
they won't be seen on the camera.
Got it.
All right. It's the shade structure.
All right, everybody. Last application for review tonight. This is a request by the owners of the Rubin Building at 457 North Palm Canyon Drive for a minor certificate of appropriateness.
Quiet out there.
So this site was reviewed for Class 1 designation, which was an owner-initiated request at the end of last year. This mixed-use building in the Central Business District has commercial units on the ground floor and 2 residential units on the upper level. The new owner has shared, let's see, the new owner has shared with the board their vision for revitalizing the building's commercial appeal and the repairs of historic features that they plan to do that have been neglected over many years of this building's existence. And the owner provided a portfolio of historic projects completed in other cities to demonstrate their commitment and vision to Palm Springs. So I believe everyone received that information as part of this review. This is a photograph of the exterior of the building taken more recently. It shows the repainted facade of the building. And one of the issues that we ran into is that some of the exterior work was undertaken before and during the designation process, while the owners had perceived the arcade of the space to be more interior rather than exterior. So there was that discrepancy there, but we would consider that arcade an exterior feature, and that's how it was designated as part of our application. And so that requires any sort of change to those features to go through a certificate of appropriateness. I just want to clarify why we're looking at that space. I'm going to actually just run through the proposal with the different alterations or modifications that were in the packet, and then we can follow up with questions at the end. So in order to address the exterior modifications, the owner has submitted this application. The first one is related to the paint scheme as shown on this slide, and these are for the storefronts within the arcade space. When it comes to exterior paint in the arcade, we didn't really run into any research for the historic color scheme. That wasn't found as part of the designation proceedings. And so with that, and the fact that there is a level of limited visibility within the arcade, and staff finds that the proposed colors, while they're not technically desert neutral, there isn't really a guiding request for that at this location, and the proposal doesn't diminish or negatively impair the resource with these paint colors. So staff is in support of the changed paint colors inside the arcade. The request also calls for the installation of 10 new light fixtures inside the arcade space. As you see in this slide, they're brass-colored sconces detailing the entry features for most of these locations, and you can see the design of the actual fixture has a more verticality. It's vertical ornate metalwork. It's limited in where you can see them, but we do find that these new light fixtures don't match the time period or the styling of the building as it was designated. To avoid any confusion or to enhance the period's accuracy for the resource, staff does recommend that these fixtures be replaced with the more simple sconce or can light that we see to be more compatible with this time period of building. In terms of the exterior trim, the specific one we had looked at was the projecting storefront windows at the front of the actual building. And the proposal is that the storefront windows and the metal tracery be painted a brass color. The metal finish on the projecting storefront, when we look at it closely with the photos that we had taken before any changes had occurred, it does look like the surfaces had been painted in the past. It looks to me that there has been some failure of that paint, so repainting has been occurring and there was peeling in certain locations. So it is a surface that had been altered in the past, which was different than what we had originally thought, and we thought it was an unfinished, unpainted surface, but that does not seem to be the case. Since the original finish of the material was painted and its previous deterioration requires new paint to be applied, staff recommends that the condition of its metal finish to be restored when this feature is being fully restored, instead of requiring the current paint to be stripped to a surface that we may not know what the condition looks like. And then the last thing that we had as part of this application is the creation of a semi-enclosed outdoor space in front of the building, and using plantings and permanent planters was the intention of the design to create that delineation between the private and public space. The intent of this area is to benefit a future commercial space on the ground level. The historic documentation does show planters and vegetation in front of the building, but the proposal of the permanent planters with the form of a hedge may present some long-term maintenance challenges and potential risks to the future of those plantings damaging or obscuring the front of the building. What staff recommends actually is that we need a bit more detail to develop what is being proposed and intended in the space with dimensions and a detail of planting materials. And that I think we feel comfortable reviewing that with the applicant at the staff level to make sure that no permanent changes are made to the facade and that what is chosen for potential planting material or material to delineate that space would be such that it would meet the criteria where it would not create an adverse impact to the surface or the view of the front of the building. So based on the criteria for alteration, for class 1, all changes must minimize impacts to character defining features, and any addition should be compatible with design to the historic resource and not create a significant impact to character defining features. So these are the things that we would consider for any of the elements that would be moved forward with a staff review. And then as a conclusion, the rehabilitation of our historic resources, again, is vital to the vitality of our city. Based on this analysis and the proposed scope of work, staff recommends approval with the 4 conditions listed pertaining to the exterior light fixtures and then the design of the semi-enclosed space to be reviewed and finalized with staff. I can take any questions related to the staff recommendation. As I kind of parsed out, if you have any questions for clarification, I can provide that. And of course, the applicant team has been here all night, and they're ready to answer any questions as well or provide any clarification on their project.
I have a few questions. So you're okay with the arcade paint colors? So it was the storefronts and the doors, correct? The bulkheads, or was it just the doors?
It was just the bulkheads for.
I thought the doors were going to be painted different colors too.
The doors, I believe, were
the same colors.
I think they were painted a neutral
No,
color.
I know,
but
but I was just-
it
we're
was
on staff.
our staffs with the paint. The only kind of back and forth we had with the applicant was related to the projecting storefronts and the bulkhead on top of the entrance.
Okay.
But both of those surfaces appeared to have been painted at one point in time. So when those come in for needing restoration, it would be to restore it to that original metal finish, which is what we had.
Well, actually, that was a separate question for me.
Oh.
The storefront, I was confused about what exactly was getting painted. I don't know, could somebody point it out to your good?
Yeah. So there's 2 elements.
Like
I was confused about this too.
Sorry about that, let me clarify. So the painting is happening on the outside of what's visible as well as the interior arcade.
But on here, I get the interior arcade, I'm not clear what's being painted here.
Is it this, like the hood and and then the lintel or lintel like surround thing, the frames?
Okay.
The projecting frame.
And then you said about restoring the metal?
So it'd be when those features,
That was at a separate thing at some point?
Yeah.
That's not part of this? You just don't want those painted, is that repainted?
So when those features need to be restored is when it's restored, it needs to be an unpainted surface of metal. So it being painted now, we're okay with it being painted now because it was a painted surface before and in disrepair.
Do you remember the postcard that we were shown?
Yep, right there.
Yeah, so are those the original colors?
It's hard to say if those are the original colors. It's a little bit difficult to
What year's the building again?
take colors from it.
What year's the building?
26.
46.
Yeah, 46.
Well, the card is dated 48.
Yeah, that was a discrepancy I think we pointed out in the last.
Yes, you did point that out last time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it could be, it's 2 years, who knows?
And and on the lights then, you're asking, you just leave that up to your, not discretion, it's not the right word.
Right,
But you're
right.
going to work with them to find something more appropriate to the interior lights that were put in before it was designated.
So staff feels that the new lights don't meet the criteria for change on the historic resource. And so our recommendation is that the light fixtures be replaced with something that would be more in kind with the period.
Do you have examples for us to see?
I don't have examples for you to see.
No, we would just leave that up to staff review.
Because when I saw the existing light fixtures, they really did put me off. And I'm hoping that the new ones, that whoever chooses, will be much simpler.
I think something to note, though, is that we don't have any record of
What it
any
was.
fixtures that
Yeah.
were there. And I think over the years, there have been a mixture of different types of light fixtures, and I think that was included in the packet that was submitted by the applicant. So we're not suggesting that those are the period-appropriate ones. But in the case where we don't have period-appropriate fixtures to reference, we typically go off of something that's simple.
Yeah.
And it doesn't draw attention, and that's not what these fixtures do. And so that would be our recommendation for something simple.
So I have one more question. With regard to the outdoor planters, just, the lions are not proposed for removal as part of the landscaping. Where would that go to? Just the sidewalk?
Yeah. So
And does the city have guidelines for outdoor eating?
Outdoor dining?
Yeah, they must have some guidelines they have to follow for that.
They have, they're not as stringent as you would think.
Okay.
I think the outdoor dining regulations right now are for outdoor dining in the right-of-way. This would be on their property.
It seems like the lions are going to take up your outdoor dining space.
The lions are going away.
And were those like movable planters that are being proposed? I know you're going to work with them on
Yeah,
that.
no,
so.
and when, I think that we can probably work out those details, but the way it's proposed, it's a permanent planter.
Oh, okay. Oh.
With the trees and the planting hedges.
So does zoning enter into this at all with a permanent planter at that location?
As a fixed, or as a feature,
Yeah.
we would need to verify that, but it's not a structure.
Okay, so no footings, no foundations, but permanent. Okay.
So I have a question, because I was rather confused as to these planters that will enclose the front patio. So we believe they're going to come out to the sidewalk line. And then in that, is the hedge that's 36 inches, is that from the ground or is that from the top of the planter? So is this going to be a 4.5 foot, basically, wall around that?
I think that those are kind of the details that we're worried about and want to revise to make sure that it's not obscuring the view, but also just going through the details of the maintenance of what that would require. I think some of the discussions that we've had with your team is, how with the long-term maintenance for irrigation, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's details that need to be worked out, and along with the dimensions. So those are the questions that we want to answer. But in terms of having a space up front, we think that there's a way to get there to provide that.
I'm wondering if.
And that wall would actually touch the existing planters that are up against the building currently.
The way it's designed, I believe that's the case. Did you want to elaborate? I don't know if it makes sense to have.
Yes, come on up.
Because some of this is
Thank you. Okay. should I go over all of the items, or is there specific items that you would like clarity on?
Is anybody concerned about paint?
I would like to make some comments on the paint.
Okay.
So I just want everybody to know that we went on hired a very good, high-rated professional historian to do a lot of archaeology on this building. So the decisions that were made were not something that we just,
Is that
off the cuff.
the consultant who did the report? for you?
Correct. That's Pam Daly. We didn't know about Steve at the time, otherwise I knew Steve. I met him when I came for my designation, and incidentally, I did call him for his
There's
opinion.
a lot of good local people.
There are a lot of good people. And so we learned our lesson, but, Pam is very good, and we've used many in the past. I think she did a good job. We were happy with her report. And the areas that are sort of in discussion right now, we just didn't have any historical reference that we could say, here it is. We like it when you can find something because it makes it a lot easier. We had plenty. Can you please forward to the postcard? Thank you. So when we have pieces like this, I think it makes our jobs really much easier because we can just sort of follow through. And by the way, do you have a picture of the original architect's drawing?
I don't know.
I would, if someone has that, I think that's an important document. One of the things that we did do is we visited some of the Walker projects. Most of these, yes, thank you very much. Most of these projects are up in LA. And his biggest project that really put him on the map is the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. And the Beverly Wilshire Hotel is registered as a Regency Revival. And if you look up Regency Revival, it's got a little bit of Greek, originally sort of landed outside of London in the Bath area, which we visited. And then it migrated to France. And it is not simple. It is decorative. And so if you look at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, it's very decorative. This isn't, a green and green, kind of a simplicity. So the lighting that was selected was, what does that look like? And because we had zero reference of what was there, and we all are design trained, by the way, and educated in design, and we have our degrees in design, we felt that the lights that we put in there that's what Walker would have used. And so we ordered them from overseas. These were not Home Depot, and waited a long time to get them. When we got them, 2 of them got broken, so we had to reorder. So we went through a lot of commotion getting them, and they were very expensive. So we used up our budget. And so it would really be, I would be very unhappy if I had to just take them out, throw them away, and just randomly pick something else that staff would think it's appropriate, because, I think we have to go back to the architect and the report that we did. As far as the color is concerned, if you look at this original architectural drawing, and we examined these very carefully, the trim around the metal trim looks gold. And if you visit some of his other projects up in LA, he didn't really use color, he used gold. In that case, it brass. So the reason we recognize that I think Jim spray painted them silver or something. So we recognize that they were painted, but we went to this reference of the original intent of the architecture, that they looked like they were brass. So we decided that would be the most appropriate color. That's why we selected the brass. As far as the interior colors are concerned, we had the same challenges. We did find a yellow door. I have a picture of it on my phone, which I'm happy to share with the group, in the basement. And it looks like the original color. It was yellow. But we don't really know. I mean, I just don't know what the interior colors were here. So because we then referred back to this French Regency, and because this project was very dark, we felt that this would kind of add a little happiness in there. And it's just paint. And I think the historical seems to me that the role really should be the integrity of the building and the structurals, so all of the structural, including all of the stone in there, was completely restored. So the color of the paint is really just around the doors and the mullions, and it's just paint, so it could be reversed. If somebody shows up one day and says, it used to be brown, we'll go paint it brown. But for now, I think, we're very happy with restoring what was there. The same decision came about on there's just a little metal strip that holds some of these windows in place, and that had been painted. So we figured instead of trying to hodgepodge, we went back to this original drawing. We thought, I bet they want it to be brass, so we decided that would be the appropriate color. But again, it's just paint. And the other reason we went with this color is we're fairly confident that this, the railing design, I think you can clearly see it on the photo behind you, is the gold color or bronze color. That we know for sure. So that's why I thought, well, if that's bronze, why would he paint, the two awnings up front a different color? It doesn't make sense when you study his work. So that's how we came about these colors. Again, we just didn't pull these colors out of, and he also used that around the balcony on the residential part and the gates. And we restored all of that to its original. We welded them back together because they were broken up. But that was all that bronze color. So that's why we stayed clear with the bronze. Otherwise, we thought it would look hodgepodge. But again, I don't really have any hard evidence other than the original drawing, looking at the work he's done in LA, and also knowing that bronze was used for all of the metal work upstairs. So I think that's my comments on the lights. And by the way, the lights are same color. We went with that. We used that bronze theme throughout. And look, at some points these things are not good. You can take lights off. Again, it's not. I think you guys should be really concerned about the structural and not necessarily things that could be easily replaced. It is in the documents that it's a Regency revival, and again, if you look up Regency revival, it's decorative and it's ornate, and they used lots of brass. In terms of the front yard, my understanding is that's our property. It's not city property, and I don't personally like either one of those patios at each site. So when I look at the original photos, it's kind of nice because that building stood out. Today, it's just what's next door. So on the north of us, we have the pub, and it's just not a very attractive railing. I don't remember how high it is, but I think there's up to code, I'm sure. What would that be? 3 foot or 4 foot?
3.5, probably.
3.5, okay. And then on the left side, it's a full patio with a deck at the Mexican restaurant, and people sit out there and dine all day and all night. So I think the idea for us to add the patio is not really designed to dwarf the building. I think it's designed to soften the front because, we got all the stuff, and we're sort of tucked in the back now. I think all the other stuff is what's dwarfed the building. So we do want to make the entrance a little softer, a little nicer. Again, it's just planting. I am open to, by the way, Chris Bennett, who's heads design for us and development for us, he's been with the firm for 25 years. He's a licensed architect for landscape from Cal Poly, so he's very well trained. And so we're happy to work with Sarah and coming up with something like, we don't want to do anything that's invasive. We would like to put something there that's going to survive. I think I think we're learning the severity of the weather here. But so we felt that if we just cut into the ground and actually plant into the dirt, as across the street has done with the new Thompson Hotel, and it seems like what they planted there seems to be surviving. It looks good. I think you folks should maybe take a look at it. I thought they did a really nice job. So we just wanted to mimic what's across the street. If that's a problem, I don't have any problems putting it inside of, building a container. It's just, when you have these containers, these plants eventually just, roots don't have enough room and you got to replace them. So that's the only reason. As far as the height, I have no problem keeping it within whatever the code is. may I look at this photo one more time? Just some reference in there. Thank you. So I think, again, we only have what we have to work with. So if you look at the original drawing, there was plantations in front of this building. So, and so when I purchased it, you can see that this photo, thank you very much, on the right side, Jim just stuck these pots in there and he chained them down, and I don't like the way that looked. So we like to plant something vertical that's going to survive in there. The space is very small, so I'm not really sure what would survive in there, but I think the idea of, we thought olive trees would be nice. I like multi-trunk personally, but I think Sarah suggested that they don't last here. So we're happy to change it to single. And, the whole idea is have it be a softer area. We would really like to put a sort of a French bakery coffee shop. Jim moved out his art shop end of March. And so we went through the city and we got approved to have a coffee shop in there. I want to do something really good,
Can I just ask a question about that? You could put in a restaurant without altering any of the entrance, anything? You would just, that door would be enough for people to walk in and out with their, okay.
We don't want to make any alterations.
Yeah, you'd have to go through us and all that.
I mean, I think the idea is we think it looks great the way it is, so I don't, now that we've restored it, that interior is really nice, Peter. It's just, there's tables and chairs there. We like it when people stay instead of just coming in,
I mean, it's a really tiny space that you'd be having. How many chairs can you get in there and a table?
Well, I think the idea of having this patio also would
Well, I'm talking about the
draw,
patio.
and it would be good.
How many people can you cram in that patio?
I haven't, honestly, I haven't.
Pretty
used the
big,
patio.
honestly.
Really? Is it
Yeah,
big?
it is
It's small to
actually
me.
bigger than it.
Well, you have to have a way for people to get in.
But that's
Because it's
also
that
not
whole
hopefully what our concern is.
Right, but you're gonna have planters or something in there, and you're gonna have an entrance in the middle. I don't know. Obviously, they'll have to figure out how they do it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we'll do, we'll do logically, but I mean, we're not, I think what we want to do it with integrity, we want to do it with taste. Like, I
Right.
don't buy and flip these buildings. We haven't sold any historical buildings in the history of my company of 33 years. So, and the reason I'm so picky and being so sort of emotional about this thing is like, we're creative artist people. Like, I want to enjoy this building. I'm not looking to, lipstick this thing so I can flip it, So, I want, whatever we do, I want it to last. I want the landscaping to have integrity. We'll put whatever table and chairs out there that we can fit, I don't think any of that is a deal breaker. But I just like to see the building get a little softer on the street. And the street really has had a tremendous improvement, as you guys can tell from the Thompson Hotel across. I mean, I can even tell from the clientele. Again, I'm not the expert in Palm Springs, but Summer is. And, and people come in and they're just like, really love this building, and we love that reaction. So it's I think it'll help really clean up this northern end and just make things a little bit softer and nicer.
Can I ask you a question? For those, I guess, the planners that would encase that patio, do you envision them kind of mimicking the planners that are existing?
I envisioned okay, can I stand up and, so, see, what I don't want to do is this. I don't like this metal look. It looks too industrial. And then if you look at that, they did the same thing here. So I think our vision was to do some kind of a planter and have a hedge of some sort,
I think it'd be planted in the ground.
That we thought that too.
Yeah.
So I guess I was thinking there was a structure
I
you were
don't
going to
think
build
they're-
and then
Well, we
planting
were going to go
inside
into the
that.
ground and have the hedge grow.
Okay.
Again, I think across the street they did, and it seems to work with it. But I think Sarah had some concerns about that. And then so we said, okay, if you don't want a hedge, we'll build a planter box. But planter boxes, things don't last long in them. So, but I'll do whatever you guys are happy with. But our love would be to, cut and put a nice, beautiful hedge in here. We would probably leave these happy lions here because they're just part of the building.
Everybody loves the lions.
And then,
Not me.
and you would be able to enter from these sides.
Not me.
So, it's a love and hate relationship with the
I
Times,
just don't
but,
think
and
they'd go
Jim,
with the
bless his
building.
heart, decided to give it to us because
Oh,
he
how
couldn't
nice.
figure out how to move them. You need a couple of cranes, so he donated it to us, so.
All right, so we're not approving any specific design. I think what we're doing is, again, if we go with staff recommendation, paint's fine, looking at some alternate light fixtures, and then working on the landscape design with the property owner. Are you all good with that?
I'm fine with that.
Well, I mean, I can't dismiss his argument about these custom lights that they bought and the French Regency element being decorative. I mean, I don't think we're, so you're saying that that's gotta go and be
No,
something simpler?
I'm not saying that.
But that's what you're saying, right?
That's what Sarah said.
Yeah, you guys are, that's
I don't-
up for
I mean,
discussion.
I don't think how much they cost should be our.
No, but I mean, I was
concern, but-
convinced by his description of what Regency was all about, and it was very decorative. And just because it's 1946, and this is me saying this,
Yeah.
46, 48, it should have a simple, because we don't really know what it looked like, it should be a simple sconce or something.
Well, I think that would be more like, probably Sarah's thinking more like the Secretary of Interior standards. You wouldn't suppose something was, and you would, yeah.
I think they look pretty. I think they don't look original, but they look in keeping with the property Regency. I mean, it would look more jarring to me to have something like aggressively like very simple and like inconspicuous, because this building is not simple and inconspicuous.
I have to agree with that.
I think that they're an excellent choice, actually, and they totally the lighting in that arcade. You totally need more lighting in that arcade. Like I would approve the paint and the lighting, and let staff let you work. My proposal would just let like have the patio area be like worked out with staff. That's.
We would be very grateful if that was a decision, because again, it just becomes a matter of, I like this light better than that light.
No, I'm just saying, my argument was.
Sarah wanted to-
Oh, sorry.
Just
Yes.
to clarify the discussion, if you guys are deliberating, we need to make sure that you guys are deliberating amongst yourselves.
And not with the applicant.
Yeah, because it in terms
Yeah.
of procedure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
because-
You can have a seat.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Please leave my lights.
We went to deliberating rather quickly. Okay, so we're deliberating.
Or discussion.
Based on what we know. What's our, what else, what you got?
I would just like to say that I believe we are in a situation where something was done without approval, and now we're being asked to approve something, unlike, and I think it's very subjective, I don't think the light fixtures are appropriate. And that's all I will say, except that in the past where things have been done without approval or before, we have not been amenable to that. And so that's how I would view this particular part of this request. Otherwise, I am very much in agreement to let Sarah work with the applicant and
For the
move forward.
landscape.
For the landscape, for everything.
Okay.
Whatever
Except for
needs.
the lighting. Except for, or you're
No,
okay?
I think she should be charged to
Yes.
discuss the lighting.
Correct. That's what yeah.
But following the Department of Interior standards, you would be moving towards something that would be significantly and directly simpler, not in the spirit of a highly decorative Regency Revival design, but something that would be distinctly not that, so that we clearly would say that's not original.
And we don't
And,
know what it would have been.
Right, we don't know, and so the guidelines would go really simple. And would you be okay with that?
I would be fine with that.
No, I wouldn't. I just don't think I just think in this particular case, knowing the style of the building and what his other work looks like in the Wilshire, Beverly Wilshire, is that it's, for us to say, no, just because the secretary here says it should be something simple that you can't really recognize as a particular error or whatever, may be in general correct, but in this case it's not. That's just my opinion. I think Regency demands decoration and not just a simple nondescript.
Well, then let's go for something, subjective opinion here, that actually is a French or a Hollywood Regency, which this is more Hollywood Regency than French Regency.
Yeah, okay.
Secretary of Interior Standards, though, also says that you shouldn't use architectural salvage on buildings like this, because then if it is old, actually old, then it can be confused as original because it's clearly old, but it's not original to the building, which is something that I personally don't agree with, but that's also in the Secretary of the Interior Standards.
Yeah, but
if we're
that's
following
not the
them.
point of using architectural salvage. It's something new that is distinguished from something original, but still compatible.
But that's the point, is the Secretary of Interior Standards says that you shouldn't do that because you can't it's hard to determine whether it's original and not original when looking at it, if it's actually also, if it's salvaged from a building in that.
You misheard me.
Oh, sorry, okay.
You
Okay,
misheard.
sorry.
May I, I'm sorry, there's.
I think we're.
No, it has to do with, it's less about the style, but I think there was a comment that made that we did this without approval. This was done before we came to you for designation, and we, of all of the dozens of historic projects we've done, and by the way, this is probably the smallest, we've never had anybody select lighting for the interior. We always looked at this as interior. So if you look at the exterior of this building, we didn't touch a thing. So I just don't want this perception that we went and did this in the middle of the night. So when we came to you for our original designation, and when you folks came as a tour, I showed you these lights, and I showed you exactly where they were at, and they weren't all there because they were custom ordered, but one of them was, or a couple of them were up.
Okay.
Just for the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we have all the information we need. All right, so what's the pleasure of the board? How do you feel?
I've kind of been vacillating a little bit, listening to the discussion. I think I'm leaning towards the perspective of basically letting staff kind of work through this with them.
Which parts?
The lights.
Of the
And
lights,
the-
the
and the-
lights, the landscaping.
I think we're all okay
Yeah.
with paint.
Yeah.
I would suggest that staff seriously consider the style and be open to the idea that a light fixture could be decorative and doesn't have to be nondescript, because it would be consistent with the style. At least to consider it very seriously. Can you do that?
That becomes subjective in a
Well, you
way
have to make some
that's,
decision. I mean, geez.
but the Department of Interior standards say it should be distinctly different and not. Is a question for you, Sarah, did we designate that interior arcade is actually exterior space?
Yes.
So that's official and that's done?
Yes.
Okay.
Character defined.
I was hoping that would save us.
But the recommendation here says replace them with simple fixtures that are more period appropriate. I would argue that simple fixtures are not more period appropriate for this. So if we're adopting the recommendation, then are we adopting that they're more period appropriate? Are we adopting that they should be replaced with simple fixtures that are distinct from the original? Sorry.
Sarah's got it.
Just for clear clarification, I think with the light fixtures, having clear direction is gonna help us and the applicant. So if the board wishes for the existing proposed light fixtures to remain, then to scratch that off and just allow that to be approved. Because the recommendation here is to change what's there.
Can we actually ask for a show of hands before we do a motion? Who would support just keeping the existing lights that they put in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was 5? Yeah. 6. All right. So I think then that would make a motion that we approve the paint as proposed, and then we leave we approve the lights as installed, and we leave the landscaping exterior front part of the building up to working staff and the applicant working together. How does that sound?
Second.
Did you make a motion?
Not really, I was
Oh.
trying to.
Make that a
I was
motion.
summarizing, I was summarizing to make sure we were all on the same
I have
page.
one question.
Please make it a motion.
These existing lights will never be part of the designation as the landmark, right? It will be distinctly that it is not original or contributing
Well,
materials.
there's also a record,
Correct.
just
Right.
with the reports
Right,
that they're,
right. Just
they
want to
were
make sure
replaced.
that anyone that comes in the future doesn't.
I mean, we can't, if somebody's confused and thinks they're, we can't do anything about that.
But the
There
report-
is an official record that they are not
The
original.
reason why this application is important is that we have record of the cut sheets and the applicant's request to say we are installing new lights. So this would be a record that stays with this project, so the future us and the future me will go back and say this was installed in 2026. So that
There
is
you go.
clear, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
And that's an excellent motion you made. Love it.
Is that good enough, what I said?
Could you please repeat?
I move to approve the project, approve the project subject to the condition that staff work with the applicant on the landscaping. The paint is approved and the lights are approved as installed by the applicant.
Second.
And I don't know if you have these other recommendations, though, do we don't need to.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and take the motion.
Okay.
As you stated.
Okay,
So this will scratch the staff recommendation and.
Got it, okay. All right.
And it was seconded.
Okay, so where's my, uh-oh, I lost my notes, here we go. Okay. Sorry, let me put my glasses back on. So we have a motion by Board Member Hanson, or Chair Hanson, and a second by Board Member Mashka Hitchcock. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none.
I have a concern.
Oh, go ahead.
When I think back about earlier discussions we've had, not only about this building but others, I don't feel that I have enough information to make a decision.
Okay, well then you can abstain or vote no.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, seeing no more questions, everybody else is good? Okay, I will call the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so the motion passes 5-2. Thank you. Thanks for sticking it out this long.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we are moving on to reports, requests, and comments. Are there any brief general comments and/or other issues of concern from members of the board? Board Member Marusi.
The issue of the Mills Act came up
Yeah.
at the last city council meeting, and apparently it's going to be discussed tomorrow. And the report implied that the staff was going to prepare a document or something explaining the Mills Act and how it applies in this particular case, or what is the staff preparing for the city council?
I'm sorry, city council tomorrow?
Isn't it on the agenda for tomorrow?
I don't believe it's on the agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
There was a discussion about the Mills Act that came up during the last city council meeting.
Right.
Where they asked for questions and details about how many Mills Act contracts have we issued, what's in the pipeline, and what's the fiscal impact for the city as a general. We provided city council with some general numbers, I mean, specific numbers on the number of contracts, but general numbers in terms of fiscal impact. We haven't had specific direction to come back with more details, but we are looking at the Mills Act program as part of, the overall discussion related to the historic preservation ordinance. And things
Well, I'm
like
very concerned about that, because if a council person is not that familiar with preservation overall, they may not realize how significant the Mills Act is, particularly in this town, for getting things designated. And so if it ends up being looked at just for the dollars and cents of how much the city's losing on their, some portion of property tax, that's very misleading. And I'm concerned, based on the question from the mayor, that this could be something that bothers them. So that's why the report, wherever it is that's being prepared by staff, needs to be really careful about how it's presented.
So there's no report being prepared at the moment, but yes, we've been fielding questions that have been coming up as we present Mills Act contracts to the city staff, or the city council. In terms of the impacts to the Mills Act contract program, we're not proposing any changes at this time. We're just providing information. But I think if there are more discussions moving forward, we'll be sure to inform the board of what the discussion looks like. And we have made it clear in our discussions that, you know, this is our only incentive for the historic preservation program. It's really important to have a tool for preservation. We know that the landscape of preservation has changed in Palm Springs, but understanding the program, and if there are, you know, certain types of tightening up of the program that needs to happen, maybe that's something to consider, but it is an important incentive.
Yeah, that would be the only thing that you know, there are alternatives. You know, you can put a cap on the value of a property that can apply for the, you know, there's alternatives to just trash the whole program.
Right, of course. Well, let's
To be
bring
considered.
those up.
Where would those changes take place? At the city level, the state level?
It would be we would be looking at it at the city level.
Okay.
And a lot
We can
of,
do that.
you know, the Mills Act contract discussion is actually happening in many, many jurisdictions throughout California right now. So I know LA had a moratorium on their program for 5 years or something like that to look at details.
Figure some things out.
Just to-
Yeah.
Well, you know,
to
you think the
fine-tune
program
it.
hasn't been in effect really that long, and as cities got further and further into it, you know, discovered some things that, you know, needed to be tweaked, or that
Constantly.
didn't work, or, you know, and it was a concern in LA that you had people that owned $10 million properties applying for the Mills Act. So They did put a cap on the
So each
valuation. At
municipality-
least, that's what they were talking about. I believe they actually did it.
Just the last element of that was that in the discussion from the last city council meeting, it mentioned something about $20,000 to $35,000 a year in property tax revenue, but the city doesn't get the entirety of property tax revenue. We
No,
get just a portion.
Small percentage.
So we have to make absolutely sure we're not
Yeah.
talking about the total property tax reduction, because we only get a piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could make a big difference in terms of what, because they said $25,000 to $30,000. Is it per property?
No.
And again, those were very high-level numbers. I think if we need to really start to produce numbers, we need to, you know.
But that's key, because we don't get that much from the state on
Yeah.
property tax, right? You get a piece.
We get a percentage of the savings. I mean, yeah, the city gets a percentage, the county gets most of the
Right, the
property
county gets
tax
most of it.
revenue, and the
And-
city gets a percentage
Right,
of
so
it.
our piece is not the
Yeah.
entire county's chunk.
Right, yeah.
So that's got to be clear.
Right.
So, but yes, there are discussions.
Good, 'cause if I was on the council, I might not know much about preservation. Like, well, this is an outrage. I mean,
Yeah.
25 to 30,000,
Right.
you know, and out of context, they wouldn't realize it.
I just would hate to go back in time with a preservation philosophy.
Huh?
I would
I
hate
agree.
for the city to go back in
Yeah.
time.
I mean, it's working so well as it is, and the city, you know, we have thousands and thousands of houses here.
Well, and how things that people fought long and hard. for.
Indeed. And it's just, it would be really a tragedy.
Especially in Palm Springs, where so much of what the identity of the city, thanks to some of the council members on this, or the board members, is the architecture, is the preserved, the pristinely preserved
So many
architecture.
elements of why the Mills Act is important, and one of them, of course, is that it's the brand. I mean,
It
people
is.
love the fact that so many buildings are designated.
Yeah.
And they go, and there's a map, and they can drive around, and they can see them. I mean, it's a big deal. So anyway, just, it seems sort of offhanded, oh, the Mills Act, what's that all, but, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm very sensitive, obviously, about the Mills Act.
Okay, are we allowed to acknowledge our outgoing board member today?
Yes,
Yeah?
especially since
I would just, I'd like to say boo-hoo. I'm very sad to see you go. It's been an honor working with you and learning from you, and his knowledge of Palm Springs and modernism is unparalleled. I don't know if you saw the presentation they did at the PS ModCom Awards. There was an entire show a great summary of his preservation years. And it's pretty, I had no idea it was even that broad in terms of his advocacy in Los Angeles, and he knows everybody. As we know, he's a published author. So I'm hoping when he comes back, he can reapply, right? You have
He
a
didn't
year
ask
off?
permission from us to leave.
Well, I wish you lots of fun and good luck and
Thank
all
you.
that stuff on your trip.
I've
You will
really-
definitely be missed.
Really enjoyed being on the HSPB, and I mean, my term ends in June anyway, so this resignation is really only for
Right.
2 meetings.
Yeah.
But I would have reapplied had we not been, if we were going to take this trip. So, you know, obviously when I return, there will be a full board and people may not be leaving for a while, whatever. So, you know, eventually maybe I'll be back. I'd like to. I've really enjoyed it, and I love working with all of you, and you're all very intelligent and have good questions and think things through carefully, read your reports. And I've seen a lot of historic site boards in my years of being an architectural historian, which are not nearly as prepared as we all are. You know, people get appointed by city councils for a variety of reasons, and sometimes and often they're not because they have credit, whatever, you know, they're not, you know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
You
it's
will
been
be
great,
missed.
and thank you very
Yes.
much.
And have a safe trip.
Thank you, thank you.
You should have brought cupcakes, though.
Croissants.
Yeah, I didn't-
Croissants,
Jaden brought
that's
us
more
a
like
little
it.
poem. Okay. All right, anybody else have brief comments to share before we go to staff comments? Staff comments, Sarah.
Well, I am going to piggyback on that and thank Peter for his service on the board. It was a pleasure to have your insight on so many things, Palm Springs. I think that is invaluable, and you can watch us in action wherever you are. You miss us.
Only 9 or 10 hours ahead. What the heck?
Yeah, you're gonna be in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And it was, you know, we were really lucky to have you on the board exactly in the moment when we needed you to be on the board. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yes. I have a couple things. I'm going to be sending out an email. It's that time of year again where I request your qualifications so that I can finish applying for our CLG report. And so that email will be coming through. Usually it's filling out a form related to your qualifications and then your resume so that we can update that and send that to the state. So I'll send that email. If you don't mind sending me that information, that will be great. If there's no changes, you can just send me an email saying no changes. We can use what we have from last year. That's perfect too. And then I know it's a ways off, but I know people will start to get planning. We are maintaining, our board is maintaining August as the month of being dark. I know the city council has adopted a slightly different summer schedule, but I just wanted to clarify that our board will maintain the month of August being dark. And thank you for all your work today. It was a lot of discussion and good outcomes. So thank you all.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess the Historic Site Preservation Board meeting is adjourned to its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, May 5th, 2026 at 12:30 p.m. We will meet here in the large conference room at City Hall at 3200 Cockwitz Canyon Way. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.